September 20th, 2023. The time is exactly 3:47 p.m. The location is North Wales, a place usually defined by its rolling green hills and deafening silence. But this afternoon, that silence is violently shattered. A convoy of elite armed police vehicles screams down a single-track country lane, tires tearing up the verge as they race toward what appears to be an ordinary dilapidated farm. To the casual observer, this is overkill for a rural disturbance. But in the next 60 seconds, these officers are about to uncover something that will rewrite the history books of British crime. Inside a barn that looks like it houses nothing more than rusted tractors and hay bales lies 613 kilograms of pure death. We are talking about class, a cocaine and heroin, stacked in bricks, so numerous they look like construction materials. It is enough poison to kill half the population of Britain, carrying a street value that flirts with £1 billion. But here is the part that will make your blood run cold. This massive hoard was not a stockpile accumulated over years. This was just one delivery. It was the 9th successful run in a mere 4 months. The man responsible for this mountain of contraband had already flooded British streets with enough narcotics to supply every major city: Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, London for half a year. Entire communities poisoned by a single operation, and the terrifying reality, tomorrow, he was planning delivery number 10. However, the sheer volume of the drugs is not even the most terrifying part of this story. When the dust settled and the handcuffs clicked, the faces pressed against the police cruisers were not those of hardened, scar-faced gangsters. They were not career criminals with long rap sheets. They were your neighbors. They were successful businessmen, family men, the kind of people you would trust to watch your children or hold your spare key. One ran the local transport company, a fixture of the local economy. Another sponsored the youth football team, cheering from the sidelines on rainy Sundays. They paid their taxes, attended community fundraising events, and helped elderly neighbors carry their heavy shopping bags. By day, they were the absolute pillars of their community, blending seamlessly into the fabric of polite society. By night, they were the architects of Britain's most deadly drug empire. Tonight, I am going to show you exactly how 4 ordinary men built a criminal operation so sophisticated, so perfectly hidden, that they fooled everyone, including themselves, into thinking they were untouchable. We will dismantle the mechanics of a £1 billion empire that came crashing down in a single afternoon because of one phone call and one tiny mistake. If stories of deception and double lives grip you, you need to pay attention, because what you are about to discover will change how you look at everyone in your community forever. Trust me, after tonight, you will never look at a quiet country lane the same way again. A quiet corner of rural Flintshire is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. This was a community where crime statistics barely registered a blip on the radar. Year after year, the most serious incidents involved lost livestock and the occasional parking dispute. The local police officer would later admit that his biggest challenges typically involved mediating neighborly disagreements about hedge heights and helping residents track down wandering farm animals. Picture the perfect Welsh countryside, stone cottages with neat gardens, a community that prided itself on trust, tradition, and taking care of their own. It was the last place on earth you would expect to find the headquarters of Britain's most sophisticated drug empire. Yet behind those innocent wooden gates at Hillview Farm, 4 men were operating what investigators would later call the most sophisticated criminal enterprise in modern British history. Between May and September 2023, this single location processed more class A drugs than some entire police forces seize in a decade. Every 12 days, like a deadly, rhythmic heartbeat, an articulated lorry would leave this farm at exactly 6:00 a.m. its destination, the drug capitals of Europe. The driver was Guy Remington, a 48-year-old respected local businessman who had been making this journey for 15 years. Customs officers knew him by name. Border guards waved him through with smiles, seeing only a hard-working hauler. They had no idea they were greeting death itself. 24 hours later, that same lorry would return, but something deadly had been added to the cargo. Hidden behind false walls, so sophisticated, they fooled X-ray machines compartments designed by the same engineers who build bank vaults, was enough pure cocaine to turn every teenager in Manchester into an addict. The Olseley Guy Remington was the perfect weapon because he was perfection personified. Married to his childhood sweetheart with 2 teenage daughters, he owned G.S. Remington College. He coached his daughter's netball team and was voted Businessman of the Year in 2022. But beneath this veneer of suburban respectability, Remington had established direct contact with suppliers linked to the Sinaloa cartel. But even a man like Remington needed a base, and he found it with Luke Anthony Hurst. Hurst had not inherited Hillview Farm. He had specifically purchased it after 3 years of careful searching. It was chosen for one purpose only, to become the UK headquarters for a historic importation operation. Hurst's genius lay in the system he created to protect it, a protocol police later called criminal perfection. Rule 1. No customer ever sees the farm. Not even his closest distributors knew where the drugs originated. Rule 2. All meetings happen at predetermined locations, miles away service stations, industrial estates, or abandoned car parks. Rule 3 is where the operation became truly terrifying. Hurst would take possession of a customer's vehicle, drive it alone to his property, load it with enough drugs to destroy hundreds of lives, and then return it to a completely different location. The customers never knew where the drugs came from, ensuring that even under interrogation, they could not give up the source. Inside those innocent-looking farm buildings, police would later discover industrial scales, vacuum sealing equipment, and label printers. This was not drug dealing, it was industrial-scale poison production. From that single, isolated location in Wales, drugs were flowing like a river of death to organised crime groups across half of Britain. The farm was the heart, pumping poison to Liverpool's most dangerous gangs, Manchester's street dealers, London's high-end suppliers, and Birmingham's criminal networks. Conservative estimates suggest that Hurst was processing between £15 and £30 million worth of drugs every single fortnight. Imagine that reality. Every 2 weeks, enough poison to destroy more lives than a natural disaster was flowing out of one quiet farm lane. But the money was just the beginning. This operation required a distribution network spanning the entire country, and that is where two men, seemingly ordinary businessmen living hundreds of miles apart, were about to reveal themselves as perhaps the most successful drug distributors in British history. Thomas Smith, a 43-year-old resident of Goby Drive in Liverpool, drove a modest Ford Mondeo and lived in a 3-bedroom semi-detached house bought with a standard 20-year mortgage. To his neighbours, Thomas was the definition of ordinary. He was the man who helped elderly Mrs. Patterson with her weekly shopping and always volunteered to clear snow from the community pathways. During winter, his children played football with the neighbourhood kids every weekend, but the truth was absolutely terrifying. When police finally raided Thomas Smith's home, they uncovered evidence of one of the most extensive drug distribution networks ever documented. Smith kept records, meticulous, obsessive records. Inside dozens of handwritten notebooks, investigators found the banality of evil written in blue ink. Every transaction was carefully documented. Names, addresses, quantities, prices, and even customer preferences and payment schedules. These notebooks revealed a network of over 200 individual drug dealers across Liverpool, Manchester, Preston, Blackpool, and Chester. Smith was not just buying drugs from the Welsh operation. He was the supply line for entire criminal organisations across northwest England. His monthly orders from Hurst's farm averaged 80 to 120 kilograms of cocaine and 20 to 30 kilograms of heroin. The street value of just his share was £8 to £12 million every single month. While his children were sleeping upstairs, Thomas Smith was coordinating the logistics of an empire. 300 miles south, Morgan Towner was running a parallel operation that was even more sinister. Towner specialised in high-value cocaine distribution to the wealthy suburbs of Surrey, Hampshire, and Greater London. His customers were not desperate street addicts. They were wealthy professionals, celebrities, and people with money, power, and influence. Police surveillance revealed Towner's typical delivery consisted of 5 to 10 kilograms of pure cocaine, packaged in individual units worth £3,000 to £5,000 each. He was supplying the kind of people whose drug habits could influence government policy, business decisions, and media coverage. Together, Smith and Towner were moving approximately 70% of all drugs imported through Hurst's Welsh operation. Between them, they controlled distribution networks worth over £400 million annually, and they were not slowing down. By September 23, this four-man network was importing drugs faster than they could distribute them. They were planning to expand operations, recruit additional drivers, and open new European routes. They were talking about doubling their operation, flooding Britain with nearly £1 billion worth of drugs annually. They had no idea that every phone call, every meeting, and every single move they made was being watched by 47 of Britain's most elite investigators. The net was closing, and the hunters were ready. The men at the top of this criminal pyramid believed they were invisible, protected by layers of deception and the veneer of respectability. But they had no idea that a joint task force of 47 specialist investigators from the Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit, NWROCU, had been watching their every move for 6 months. These were elite investigators trained to infiltrate the most dangerous criminal organizations in Britain, boasting a 94% conviction rate on major operations. This was Operation Harvest, the most complex, expensive, and critical drug trafficking investigation in the unit's history. While Remington was tucking his daughters into bed and Hurst was tending to his farm, algorithms were already dismantling their lives. The investigation began quietly in January 2023, not with a tip-off, but with a spreadsheet. Financial intelligence algorithms flagged unusual European travel patterns by G.S. Remington haulage. It was not just the frequency, it was the behavior. Same routes, same timing, but suddenly, there were cash payments for fuel, instead of the standard company credit card transactions, a tiny slip-in, tradecraft that lit a digital flare. By February, border surveillance technology recorded a damning anomaly. Remington's vehicle dimensions and weight were changing between outbound and return journeys. The trailer left light and returned heavier, always heavier. To the naked eye, it looked identical, but to the sensors, it was carrying a ghost weight that did not appear on any manifest. By March 2023, cross-border intelligence sharing had identified Remington's lorry at warehouses controlled by known drug cartels in Amsterdam, Brussels, and Antwerp. In April, financial surveillance detected large cash deposits into accounts linked to Luke Hurst with no corresponding legitimate business activity. Finally, in May, surveillance teams confirmed the link, regular contact between Remington and Hurst. The calls were always made from different locations, always brief, and always coded. But confirming the operation was not enough. The police needed to catch them red-handed, with enough evidence to guarantee convictions that would put them away for decades. Using technology that sounds like science fiction, investigators tracked every aspect of the network's operations: satellite surveillance, phone intercepts, financial tracking, and vehicle movement analysis. They knew Remington's European travel schedule better than his own wife did. They could predict when each shipment would arrive, where it would be processed, who would collect it, and where it would be distributed. The trap was set, they just needed the prey to walk into it. On September 19, 2023, at 11:43 p.m., the trap began to close. Remington's lorry was photographed, leaving a warehouse complex in Brussels, known to be a European distribution center for South American cartels. At 3:15 a.m. on September 20th, the same lorry entered UK territory through the Channel Tunnel. Border scanners immediately lit up, detecting a massive anomalous weight distribution in the trailer's hidden compartments. Investigators held their breath and let him pass, needing him to lead them to the hive. At 2:47 p.m. Remington's trailer backed up to the main processing building at Hurst Farm. The surveillance team watched the doors swing open. At 3:47 p.m. Operation Harvest was about to reach its explosive climax. After tracking millions of pounds in criminal activity and watching enough drugs flow through Britain to poison an entire generation, the hunters were finally ready to strike. At exactly 3:47 p.m. on September 20, 2023, the command was given. 57 armed officers across 12 vehicles descended on 4 simultaneous locations in England and Wales. The silence of the Welsh countryside was replaced by the roar of engines and the shouting of orders. At Hillview Farm, Remington and Hurst were in the process of unloading what would become the largest single drug seizure in British criminal history. The trailer doors were gaping open, and packages were scattered across the concrete floor: 505 kilograms of pure cocaine and 108 kilograms of heroin. A haul with a street value of £247 million. Guy Remington was arrested at 3:52 p.m., literally standing over millions of pounds worth of death. His hands covered in white powder, unable to speak a single word as the reality of his double life collapsed. But Luke Hurst, the mastermind, was nowhere to be found. For 4 hours, specialist search teams combed every building, every field, and every possible hiding place on the 300-acre property. Had he escaped? Was he armed? At 7:23 p.m., a routine police patrol in Mold Town Centre spotted a taxi. In the back seat, trying desperately to look invisible, was Luke Hurst. To this day, police have never revealed where he was going, but his empire ended in the back of a cab. Meanwhile, forensic teams executing search warrants at Remington's legitimate business found something that defied belief: £734,000 in cash hidden in ceiling spaces, buried in the yard, and sealed in waterproof containers. This was a complete criminal enterprise that had generated millions. The dominoes continued to fall. On October 18th, Thomas Smith was arrested at his Liverpool home while reading bedtime stories to his children. On October 26th, Morgan Towner was arrested in Surrey while attending his daughter's school play. The complete seizure was staggering: 613 kilograms of class A drugs, nearly £1 million in cash, and properties and business assets worth over £3 million. 4 men, 4 families destroyed, and communities that would never be the same. On March 21, 2024, at Chester Crown Court, the men who had lived double lives finally faced the consequences. Guy Remington received 18 years imprisonment. His daughters now visit him through reinforced glass. Luke Hurst received 12 years. His farm sits empty, a monument to greed. Thomas Smith received 18 years, serving time alongside the criminals he once supplied. Morgan Towner received 7 years. Combined, they face 55 years behind bars. But the true reckoning goes deeper. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, every asset has been permanently seized: cars, homes, businesses, all now belong to the state, with the money reinvested in the very communities they poisoned. Since their arrest, drug-related crime in their operation zones has fallen by 34%, and hospital admissions for overdoses have decreased by 41%. Today, Hillview Farm sits silent behind police tape, but this case serves as a terrifying reminder that organized crime can operate anywhere. Your neighbor who travels frequently, the successful businessman who pays cash, they might be exactly who they appear to be, or they might be the next Guy Remington. Justice is inevitable, and sometimes it arrives with 57 armed officers at your door. If this journey into Britain's criminal underworld shook you, hit that subscribe button for Crime Scene Chronicles. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, the most dangerous criminals are often the ones you never suspect.